I shouldn't be alive, but I am. And this is my story. It's a story of how a kid who thought God was cruel or maybe not even real went from bitterness, pain, and doubt to healing, faith, and finally coming home to the Catholic Church. It's long, but it's my whole journey. And I believe God still remembers every moment. See, I was born on April of 96. And 2 months later, on my dad's first Father's Day, I had a stroke. It affected the right side of my body and left me with very little motor skill. And I would say little to no feeling either. My parents had me and my two younger siblings baptized in the Catholic Church, but after that, they left the faith. We had periods where, as a family, we'd go to my mom's cousin's church. He was a non-denominational, self-proclaimed three-point Calvinist pastor. But if any of us even pretended to be asleep that morning, we wouldn't go. I'd say all in all, besides my dad's parents being Catholic and those pictures of Jesus on the wall, religion didn't play that big of a part in my life. I would have told you I was Christian, but I felt like an atheist. I was bullied a lot for my stroke. Kids in school called me a robot because I needed a brace on my leg. They referred to my right hand as a club hand because I couldn't do much with it. So my thought of God was, if God is real, he's a jerk. What kind of loving father gives his beloved son something like this to deal with? So my conclusion was, he couldn't be real. At least, not as portrayed by Christians. During that time in my life, my savior was Spider-Man. From the comics to the 94 animated series, all the shows that came before, both animated and live action. When the 2002 movie came out, I have vivid memories of the trailer, particularly the part where he takes off his mask. I was excited for Spider-Man in real life, and everything looking real, too. No offense to Nicholas Hammond, he did a great job for what he had. But yeah, through all the hardships, bullying, and almost suicide attempt, Spider-Man was in the forefront of my mind, telling me, with great power comes great responsibility. Hence why my favorite verse in the Gospels is Luke 12:48. For whom much has been given, much more will be required. Or, in the Message paraphrase, whatever your thoughts of it, it is rendered, with great gifts comes great responsibilities. Seriously, look it up. It's funny. Anyways, when I was 16, I was with a friend of mine, smoking weed in the woods behind his house, and he told me, between puffs, you should come to my church's Bible camp this summer with me. Of course I said no. He wasn't that great of a witness. No offense, Ed. And we were smoking. He told me much later that he was also being forced to go. So he gave my number to his pastors, and they called me relentlessly, leaving voicemails telling me to come to Alive Summer Camp 2012. I went reluctantly. When we got there, I was immediately depressed. And I was thinking of my dog Diana, and my Nono, my mom's dad, by the way, both of which had died years prior. Ed asked if I wanted a prayer, so I figured, when in Rome, and he prayed, specifically that I would have a sign that Nono was in heaven. A little backstory. Nono was a boxer in his youth, and he would hold my left hand behind my back to get me to use my right hand more. He would tell me constantly that I needed to use it more. The reason that's important is because on the second day of Alive, it was the end of the second day, and they had a service. During the altar call, the head pastor came up and said that they were going to extend the bridge of the song they were debuting so that we could go up and receive prayer. The bridge went on. We are not lost. We are not hopeless. We are not orphans. We are not forsaken. You are our Father. You love your children. You hold our future. You still remember. Sorry, I don't sing, but point still stands. I wasn't having it. It was hot, humid, and it was late. I wanted to go home. So I was starting to leave, and the youth pastor saw me and left his post up front just to catch me. Before I could get past the pew Ed was sitting in, he put his hand on my right shoulder and prayed. He prayed that whatever was hurting me emotionally, spiritually, and physically, that would go away, and that my life would glorify God. The second he finished, a cold, sharp tingle went down the right side of my body, and I dropped. My dad later took me to a neurologist, and she said that I had 80% feeling in the right side, which is a huge jump from nothing with little flares every once in a while. The song to this day is my favorite song, and I lift my right hand whenever I hear it now because he still remembers. But at that camp, I was confused. I started hitting Ed to get his attention, and the campus security saw me. So they ran up and asked what was going on. I didn't have words for it, but I said enough for them to know they had to get me to a camp leader. And the camp leader brought me right to the pastor's wife. When I told her what happened, she took the mic from her husband and told everyone, and I quote, "Shut up. You need to hear this." She gave the mic back to her husband and ushered me up. The pastor said to me, "Okay, well, what's going on?" And I told everyone using the mic, and like dominoes, everyone started crying, one person after another. And I don't know if Brian in the audio booth did, but it doesn't matter. But hold on to that name, he comes back later. I got off stage and everyone started laying hands on me. I don't know if they all prayed. Maybe some just wanted to touch the healing God did. But in a room of over 200 teenagers, that's a lot of hands. When they all cleared, one stood still. It was Chris, my cousin's best friend. I didn't even know he was here. I didn't know that he went to this church. I didn't even know he was Christian. But I did know him growing up. I was super close to my cousin. I even had him as the best man at my wedding. But that's not relevant here. Chris ran up to me, hugged me tight, and whispered in my ear, and I'll never forget this. "Man, you're like a brother to me. Since I've grown up with George, my cousin, I would have given my soul for you to meet Christ, had I known." I didn't know how to respond, but I did become Mr. Popular the rest of that week. However, the real change didn't happen there. It happened when I got home. I walked into my Nona's house, and at the table was my sister's friend. She said, and pardon the language, "Oh, hey, retard," to me. That's what she said. And that's when I knew something in my heart had changed. That wouldn't have bothered me just a week earlier. But today, it did. So when I got home, I began to study. I needed to know, who is this God? The rest of the summer began a deep study into every form of the Christian faith and Abrahamic religions. But when the school year started, I was doing half a day to go to trade school for graphic design. I was just non-denominational Christian, and I never planned to leave it. One day after I was getting back to school from trade school, I ran into two kids that would become my best friends for the next few years. They came up to me and said, "There's something different about you. Are you Christian?" And I told them I was. They invited me to join them in creating something called Cadet Cross, a student-run Christian club. We had no liaison, just teachers that let us use their rooms whether they were there or not. But we didn't know what to do, thinking it might be too daunting of a task and that we were too young. So we played Bible roulette, where you open up the Bible and see what pops up. We looked, and what we got was Jeremiah 1:7. And the Lord said unto me, "Say not, I am a child, for you shall go to all that I send you, and whatsoever I command you, you shall speak." So we did what we knew. We basically held non-denominational services in the school after hours. It became the largest club in the district. Supposedly, there were middle schoolers who found out and they wanted to do something just like it. I don't know if they did. I wasn't the guy in charge to follow up. But what I do know is we loved everyone. We made sure everyone felt welcomed, even if we disagreed with them. So much so that the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, asked us to partner with them in fixing a part of our neighborhood. Think about that for a second. Of course, we partnered with them, but I guess their team was split because one of the people who was in charge of this gave me the reins. But I made sure that we were all in the news, in the local papers when they came. We made sure of it. A couple of teachers didn't like that we were getting so much traction. They were the teachers with the school's official faith club, and they wanted to absorb us. We had the numbers, they had the authority. When we declined, they went to the principal, and we didn't know what to do. We went to the Bible again and opened right up to Hebrews 11, verse 32 through 33. "For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who by faith conquered kingdoms, wrought justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions." And oh boy, the principal told them not to bring this up again or they would be fired. Now, I don't know if it was a baseless threat or what, but for all intents and purposes, we had shut the mouths of lions. God had shut the mouths of lions through this. And people who never knew God came to faith through the club. That went on for the remainder of high school. And we even passed it on to the next generation when we left. But we moved on. I briefly went to Elam Bible Institute. But we weren't a theological match, so I left. And I went to Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida for audio. I was still studying everything I could get my hands on, and this is where I had my first encounter with high church. It was Catholic, it was fine, but I was more drawn to Anglicanism. I never got a Book of Common Prayer, but I did carry an HCSB, Holman Christian Standard Bible, New Testament with Psalms and Proverbs, and I carried it in my back pocket, the way I now carry the St. Gregory Prayer Book. At Full Sail, I made friends from all over, and that's also where I got the name Tarzan, but that's not for here. Creeds, sexuality, etc. They all knew I didn't agree with them, but they also all knew I loved them and never judged them. Several times I used my student stipend to help my friends, so long as I got my bill paid first. Sometimes it was inevitable that I didn't. They knew me so well that I had one friend who didn't agree with my faith, but when I lost my HCSB, they just ran out of class and ran the entire campus. When they got back, they ran into class like they had won a race, and that New Testament with Psalms and Proverbs was the trophy. The times in Florida felt like they'd never end. But COVID hit in 2020, and I had gone back home to help my dad while he recovered from 2 knee replacement surgeries. I was unable to walk the stage, but it allowed me more time to dig into the faith even more, even deeper. And it led to a lot. I met my now wife online the month after COVID started. 1 month after COVID started, I met her. I was invited onto YouTube channels to share my testimony and things I had learned in my studies. And through my years of study, in the summer of 2020, I told my now wife I needed to become Catholic. It was hard, but it was necessary. At the end of 2020, I figured if I was going to be confirmed, I should do a Catholic Bible in a year, the same way I had done with Protestant Bibles. And of course, being the end of 2020, when I looked it up, lo and behold, Father Mike Schmitz was starting a podcast in just a few weeks to do the very thing. I found Keith Nestor shortly before my confirmation on the Easter Vigil of 2021, and he said that his priest told him when he was converting, don't do anything for a full year, just be Catholic. I took it to heart. At first, I started attending the TLM. It felt like home because Nono and Nona used to speak Italian all the time, and Church Latin is pronounced as if it were Italian. Then, one Sunday, I ran into Brian. Remember him? Supposedly, he was originally a Catholic, and by this time, he had reverted since a live summer camp. All those years ago. What? He invited me to this place called the St. Irenaeus Center. And when I went, it was a bunch of theology nerds like me just hanging out. And there I was, and a couple of guys there introduced me to the Ordinariate. They go to the center, but they attended the Ordinariate. I went, and I was sold. This was the Anglicanism that I had loved and had to leave, but in the fullness of the truth I was a part of. I got the St. Gregory prayer book and eventually even changed my canonical status when I found out how. A year after becoming Catholic, almost to the day, I was hired by the center to do their podcasts, which sparked me to remake my YouTube channel. After several years and attempts, here we are. I have more things I'm working on, but that can be for another time. But here's the thing. Every time I tell this story, there's one question that comes up almost without fail every time. Why would you leave for the Catholic Church if God moved so powerfully where you were? The short answer, because it's true. But how did I come to that conclusion? Like I said in the previous section, I wasn't looking to change where I stood in the Christian faith. I read books for and against every group. For every Lutheran catechism, whether small or large, I had a Why Lutherans Are Wrong type book. Same with Reformed traditions, the high churches like Catholic and Orthodox, and I even had Mormon and Islam and other groups that we all agree are cults. After a while, I had a thought though. What did the early church actually believe? So I started from the 1500s and went backwards. I also worked forwards from Scripture, looking at everything that came after the Bible. One of the scariest moments was taking a patristics course from Bart Ehrman. My thought was, he's an atheist and former Lutheran. If anyone's going to lean away from Catholicism, it's him. I wouldn't have called myself anti-Catholic, despite thinking Pope Francis was the Antichrist, but I definitely wanted to spar with my two Catholic friends. Then, Bart Ehrman said something about Clement's letter to the Corinthians, that it was clear Rome was already flexing their muscles early on. My heart dropped. I had to wrestle with what that meant for my faith. I read Ignatius, who said, if you didn't have the Eucharist, you weren't even Christian. I read Irenaeus and others who wrote about the authority of Rome. I avoided Catholic answers at first, thinking they'd be biased, but every early source I found kept leading me to the same three places: Anglicanism, Catholicism, and Orthodoxy. Anglican appealed to me because of its beauty and their claim to apostolic succession from Rome. Orthodoxy was beautiful and appealing as well because it didn't have a supreme head. And Catholicism tugged at me, partly because of my Italian roots, both sides of my family coming from Italy. But I knew that alone wasn't good enough of a reason. Then I looked back at what God had done at a live summer camp, and what I had learned in all the high churches. I realized something. God had reached out to a hurting kid by extraordinary means. He had also given the church ordinary means of grace that he wanted his children to have. I kept digging. Over time, I ruled out both Anglicanism and Orthodoxy because of the papacy. It was undeniable in history and theology. And when I discovered the Ordinariate, I saw that the beauty I loved in Anglicanism could live fully in the Catholic Church, where Christ was truly present. During my Protestant days, I gave God my all in every setting I was in. But to be honest, the high-energy worship music was never really me. I just wanted to worship God the way He wanted. And when I found the Catholic Church, they showed me how to do that. And the Ordinariate showed me I could do it in the style I truly loved, in the fullness of the truth. Thank you for coming to this video. And remember, He holds our future, and He still remembers.
I had a stroke when I was 2 months old, and I was in the hospital for weeks, and they said it was a miracle if I made it, and obviously I did. And for the past 16 years, I was never able to feel anything on my entire right side of the body. It literally went straight down the center. That night when Luke prayed for me, and I got that sharp, freezing cold tingle down the entire right side, I bawled my eyes out. I still feel everything in my right side now. 16 years without feeling, finally get it.